a woman?
Sojourner Truth.
Okay. What was Seneca Falls?
It was a convention of women being like, hey, we want and women. Putting women into the Declaration of Independence.
And women, yes, and women. 15th Amendment. Men.
Not women.
So
Men.
what split up over the 15th Amendment?
The women's suffrage.
Women's suffrage, yes. Ain't I a woman? Okay. Go ahead.
In the homework, on the 1978 one, it said like what was the political whatever in 1978. It didn't actually mean in 1978. It meant in like the reading.
In that heading, yes. Yes.
I just used that.
That's what that's when the year was that it was written, but it's referring to, yes. And the point there to understand as you go through those whole things is to understand how different perspectives depending on the decades. And there really are. Yeah, we certainly don't talk about women's history now compared to when I was in school. Because you didn't have Hillary Clinton, you didn't have Kamala Harris, Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State, etc. It didn't exist in the 80s. Didn't happen. You had Geraldine Ferraro, who was the first woman to run for vice president. She was not elected. But that was really a landmark. And then before that, you would have had Sandra Day O'Connor on the Supreme Court. But other than that, I mean, things were different. Okay. Plus, in the 80s, textbooks were kind of a continuation of the 70s, where you didn't have any of the people that I just mentioned. So the point is to look at the year and to see how it's written and see how it changes. Okay. Okay. Moving on then. The National American Women's Suffrage Association, big leaders, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Sound familiar? Two big strategies. Win suffrage state by state, try to pass a constitutional amendment. But this would need to be ratified by 36 states. To pass an amendment, you need 3/4, not 2/3. Usually everything in Congress is 2/3 majority. Whenever you're on Jeopardy, go with 2/3. Amendment, though, is 3/4. That's going to be rough. Susan B. Go, John, go.
Susan B. Anthony. In the late 1800s, Susan B. Anthony tried several times to introduce an amendment bill for women's suffrage, but it was always killed in the Senate.
Susan B. Anthony I just showed you that. She was arrested for voting in Rochester, New York. I told you that last year. I don't know if you remember, but remember the dollar coin? She's on the dollar coin. Has anybody ever seen the Anthony coin, dollar coin? They actually started making them in about 1979 because everybody was confusing them as quarters. They're only about the same size. Now the edges are a little different. But she led a group of women. She was arrested. She did serve jail time for it. And I think that's pretty cool. Rochester, New York is a Susan B. Anthony home. It's pretty awesome. Neat place to see. Okay, Susan B. Anthony. Go, John. You're doing great.
Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton founded the National Women's Suffrage Association, NWSA. Women's suffrage faced constant opposition. Liquor industry feared women would vote for prohibition. Textile industry worried women would vote for stopping child labor, and men feared the new rules of women.
If you take a look at the demonstrations there, of course, keep going.
Women's suffrage faced constant opposition.
Oh, I already said that. Let's skip the Penn Live one there. The Prohibition Tamaqua. Jane Addams. Remember Whole House is? I got 2 yeses. 3 yeses. Okay. Whole House, settlement houses in Chicago. You get the idea. Mostly for all people, but immigrants definitely were benefited. Women's votes were necessary to elect people who would support social reforms. Adams apparently thought women were more interested in social issues like health and education than men were. Ida Tarbell. Sound familiar? Okay. Women and progressive movement. Summary. Katie, if you would. So how do women finally win the vote? Okay, let's take a look. Anti-suffrage. Let's go to your handout. I don't know if I have this numbered. You know what? Might be. It's the one that you have. Looks like this. It's way in the back. Page 96, 97 of your black notebook. Do I have it numbered actually? How far from the. Oh, it is number? 21? Oh, yeah, I see it now. Okay, go to 21. Go to 96 of your handout, or of your black notebook. 21 in here. Okay. 96 of the black. Does that make sense now? 96. Keep going. See? Oh no, it's 98. Keep going. There you go. There, right there. All right, document A. Go Kemper.
Elliot Sewell. It has often been pointed out that women could not be census asked to legislate upon matters of war use, as no women could be military duty. But at this point, it may be extended much further. No woman can have any practical knowledge of shipping and navigation of the work of train mineral railways, of mining, or of many other subjects of high importance. Their legislation, therefore, will probably not be intelligent, and the laws they devise for the betterment of sailors, salesmen, trainmen, miners, etc., might be highly objectionable to the very persons they sought to benefit. If obedience should be refused to these laws, who is to enforce them? The men? Is it likely they will? And if the effort should be made, what stupendous disorders would occur? The entire execution of the law would be in the hands of men, backed up by an irresponsible electorate which could not lift a finger to apprehend or punish a criminal. And if all the dangers and difficulties of executing a law lay upon men, what right have the women to make the law? But the women's suffrage tends to divorce is plain to all who know anything of men and women. Political differences in families between brothers, for example, who vote on different sides do not promote harmony. How much more inharmonious must be political differences between a husband and wife, each of whom has a vote which may be used as a weapon against each other? What is the likely to be a state in the family when the husband votes one side and the wife votes another?
Okay, see what you can do with that. And chat it up there. We'll go through this really quickly. Talk it over. Let's just do the box on the right. Yep. Why did the anti-suffragists oppose women's suffrage? What do they come up with? Give me some details there. Go ahead, chat it up real quick.
And that women are not going to know how to make the correct decisions for minors and tradesmen.
Yeah, they're not educated enough.
In what area is not educated enough?
In the tradesman business, miners, and
Mining, shipping, yeah, military. You know, it's interesting. Back in the 1990s, I had a World War II veteran came into class to talk to students. In the 90s, this was. And he said women do not belong in combat. He had no problem with women in the military, but women in combat, never. He said, no way. Now, it was his opinion. I'm not saying he was right, but I'm just saying, you know, you could obviously imagine that. Remember, he was born in the 20s. He served in the 40s. Things were a different attitude. That's all I'm saying. Not saying he was right. Don't glare at me. But I'm just saying that's what he said. Women do not belong in combat.
My Uncle Bob wouldn't let me. I always help my brother cut the grass, like all his jobs, and he would never let me cut the grass at his house because he said that's not a woman's job.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm all for equal rights until somebody's gotta take the snow off the cars, and I'll let my brother do that.
But yeah, of course, exactly. Believe me, I get nominated too. Believe me. Anyway, document B. Let's take a look real quick. Go Kemp. You're doing great.
It is suffragist whose idealism was based on the mechanical institution center. The proportion of suffragist writing and speaking is on the thoughts and hands pattern, simply a It is a suffragist theory that the woman's spirit in life should be the same as the man's, and that has condemned her to share with him what is so hideous and mischief. A misfit is the miscalled education of our industrial classes, whose morals are all taught as if destined for literally rather than manual occupations, as if the national funds were collected to compel the training of a surplus of cheap shorthands, typists for the office, and to compel a lack of expert housewives in the home. It is the suffragists who are destroying the wholesome personal element in female life by their doctrine of degradation in the washing of pots and pans for their husbands, father, and son, while they demand of them the opportunity to serve in the state and their husbands, fathers, and sons of other people with what? What service? An abstract service of legislation and administration, they replied. In fact, all that barren social service which can be performed without the sweating of the brow, the soiling of a finger, is not clear how he is suspended in the sapping over our vitality as a nation. Is it too much to say that it is at the root of our half the unhealth and disease of which today's unrest is symptomatic? There are many wealthy women who have espoused suffragism and who promote it do a daily, very dangerous thing in teaching to working women that housework is degrading. And dangerous as it is, that direct denunciation of housework universal among suffragists, of which the Women's Labor League President's Pots and Pans speech is typical. There's another way in inoculating contempt for it, which is even more dangerous because more insidious and less direct. An example of insidious way, which is the mischievous spread, is shown in a letter to the Times of December 21st last, advocating to the suffrage of women. It was written by a lady from the standpoint of the leisured and cultured classes, as she expressively said, "We more fortunate women," she wrote, "plead for the franchise, not for our own sake, but for the sake of the working woman, whose round of toil she stigmatizes as drudgery, because it shall bring down at once something at least of respect and consideration, from which form the basis upon which we more fortunate women build our lives."
You know, it's interesting. When women are protected by the 19th Amendment, I think at the time, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, Janet Rankin, I think there was only one other woman in Congress at the time. So who had to vote to ratify the amendment? All men. These three excerpts, every single one of them, look at the words, look at what they use. And for the sake of time, we don't need to write everything down. All three of these were written by women.
Yeah.
Look at the point up there on the screen, the bottom point. Many of the antis were women. Now you're going to see the Equal Rights Amendment come along in the 1980s, and actually it's a lot of women that are opposed to it. The Equal Rights Amendment, because they said, well, what about divorce? What about alimony? Things like that. What about if, talking about combat, what if a woman's pregnant and the unit's called to go to war? Does a woman have to go? If you're going to have equality, then we have to have equality. Now, something to think about. So maybe this, I want you to understand the argument. That's what I'm saying. Okay? I can tell you this, growing up, when my grandfather wanted a cup of tea, my grandmother would get it. That's the way it worked. And my grandmother accepted that. Jumping a generation, my mom not so much, but me and my wife, well, if I demanded a cup of tea from my wife, I'd get a cup of tea, all right. Believe me, I'd get it. You know what I'm saying? But I better do for her like she does for me, or I'm in serious trouble. It's not the same, okay? It's not the same. Of course, she has a career. So do I. My grandmother didn't. Just throwing that out there. Okay, let's do the last one real quick. Tennessee Representative John A. Moon. This is an original. I'm sorry, I said all three. The first two were. Okay, go, Lindsay, real quick.
It has been insisted that the real purpose of the amendment is the basis for political legislation that will ultimately deprive the southern states of representation in part of Congress and their force in national affairs. In those southern states where the colored population outnumbers the white to double the number of ignorant voters by giving the colored women the right to vote, would produce a condition that would be absolutely intolerable. We owe something to the wishes that the sentiments of the people of our sister states struggling to maintain law and order and white supremacy. We are engaged now in great foreign war, and it is not proper time to change the whole electoral system. Patriotism, in my judgment, forbids the injection of this issue into national politics at this time.
Okay, so what do you think there? What would we put there? for the right box there. Yeah, definitely. You see the racial element there. Certainly existed. And don't forget, during the progressive movement, you don't see literally any advances for African Americans as far as the government is concerned. Now, on their own, Webb Du Bois created what organization? What's that called? NAACP, yes. Okay, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. But that wasn't a government program. Just understand that. That's not the government. Okay? All right, back up to the screen. Madden, go.
Women are high strung, irrational, and emotional. Women were not smart or educated enough. Women were to stay at home. Women were too physically frail. They would get tired just walking to the polling station. Women would become masculine as they voted.
We get tired walking there. That's the issue. Probably can't vote.
And I guess it's funny now to laugh at, but could you imagine a woman at the time when this stuff was like a stereotype, believed? You know, put yourself in the context. But you know something else, Madden? I love telling this story in local history. When you look at that, you get the last laugh. The only team sport that played for and won a state championship in the history of this school, besides archery, which is co-ed, is girls softball. Something to think about. But John, we're going to keep trying, okay? Okay. Map of women's suffrage. Go ahead and hit the lights here. What's the state? What's the hot spot?
Frontier.
Well, yeah, but give me a state.
Wyoming.
Wyoming. If you get something on women's suffrage on your AP test, maybe you could work in Wyoming. Don't forget Sacagawea, who was the first woman ever to vote. Sacagawea. Native Americans would say Sacagawea.
Didn't she help like lead Lewis and Clark?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, on we go. 3-part strategy for suffrage. Go, Madison. Okay, that's that quick clip I put on there. Please watch that, okay, for tomorrow. But again, that 14th Amendment, that said if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen, guaranteed citizenship rights. So women are going to use that as justification for the 19th Amendment, just like African American men, the right to vote. Okay? Katie Stanton died. Susan B. Anthony dies. The new generation, as it came to be called, many young women, middle class. Don't forget, though, and I want to point this out, if it's going to pass the state legislatures, the majority by far are men, and the men are the ones that are going to pass it. And that's exactly what happens. Okay? Working class. There's Carrie Chapman Catt. It seems very wrong for me to only mention her in the last 7 minutes when we're trying to run this through, but she plays a major role. Carrie Chapman Catt. Shay, go.
Carrie Chapman Catt led the National American Women's Suffrage Association. She lived in careful state-by-state strategies, supporting President Wilson, even though he did not like support suffrage because Democrats were a safer bet than Republicans, acting ladylike so as not to embarrass them.
Alice Paul, another key member, played by Hilary Swank in the movie Iron Jawed Angels. And if you just Google that, you can watch clips of the movie and get the idea of it. It's pretty cool. It's a great movie. It's an excellent movie. Okay, and as you can see there at the bottom, hunger strike, force fed. I'll never remember. Do you guys know Emily Savage? A few years ago, after watching the movie before it was blocked, she actually came in, and we were on shutdown at the time, and then I didn't come in, but we had a Zoom meeting, and she's like, "Was that true? Did that really happen?" Yeah, it did. You know, she thought it was like a fairy tale movie, like, you know, fiction. No, it happened. Okay, this is big. This is huge. You really got to know this. They protested at the White House during World War I. A lot of people shamed women for that. They said that was very unpatriotic. But here we are fighting for liberty. What do women want? Why not? We'll just say liberty. I know, I realize there's a little more to the story. Okay. But I do want you to know that. You see that Kaiser Wilson? That is a name given to the Tsar of Germany, Kaiser. So they're referring him to a Kaiser. Anti-women suffrage. Take a look at the left side there. John, go.
In the Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty? In the photo, the sign being displayed reads, Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty? The protesters were standing in front of the White House. Was this a good way for women to fight for the vote? Why not?
What do you think? Yes or no?
No.
Why not?
Because if you're trying to get on their side and win their favor, that's not the way to do it.
Why would it be a good thing?
Just getting their attention.
Yeah, what better audience is there? Think about it. Everybody's looking at the president, looking during World War II. Obviously, there are different two sides of the argument. Take a look at the right side. Look at that sign. Read it, Kemp.
Have you forgotten your sympathy with the poor Germans because they were not self-governed? 20
Million.
American women are not self-governed. Take the thing out of your what will you do for women's suffrage?
Okay, protesters are standing front. Read the purple part. Katie.
Many would say it is a very American way to get money to political peaceful protests that draw attention have been used by reporters to move presidents and leaders into action. At the time, however, many thought it was not proper for women to protest civilians, but these brave women did so anyway, even though many made fun of them.
Okay. On this day, Wilson gives a speech in front of Congress. Lindsay, go.
On this day in 1918, President Woodrow Wilson gave a speech before Congress in support of guaranteeing women the right to vote. Although the House of Representatives had approved the 19th constitutional amendment giving women suffrage, the Senate had not yet voted on the measure. Wilson had actually maintained a somewhat lukewarm attitude towards women's suffrage throughout his first term. In 1917, he had been picketed by suffragettes outside the White House who berated him for paying mere lip service for their cause. The protests reached the
Crescendo.
and several women were arrested, jailed, and went on hunger strike. Wilson was appalled to learn that the jail suffragettes were being force-fed, and he finally stepped in to campaign their cause. Suffragettes and their supporters agreed that Wilson.
I'll tell you what, for the sake of time, just do the last bullet point there.
Wilson's stirring words that on that day failed to drum up the necessary votes to pass the amendment. The bill died in the Senate, and it would be another year for Congress to finally pass the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote.
Drum roll, please. That you forgot the symbol. Take a look. Go grow. No.
The 19th.
No, I want you to do the very top. Say that like with an exclamation point. I wanted you to get excited, Madden. Like you just hit that home run. No, yay! There you go. Go ahead. When? Okay, do the math. 72 years. What would 72 have been? What year?
1848.
Keep going. What event was 1848? Besides the end of Mexican-American War.